Well, we've got some breaking news here. I've already recorded the video. I was just about to upload, so I'm going to front load it with the breaking news. President Donald Trump, I'm going to put it up on the screen, has just officially ended trade with Canada. We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced they are putting a digital service tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. They are obviously copying the European Union, which has done the same thing and is currently under discussion with us. Also, based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately. We will let Canada know that the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Good job, Mark Carney. You just pissed off the most powerful person in the most powerful country and our biggest ally. Good job, buddy. Anyways, back to the regularly scheduled video. Well, it's never been more obvious than now that Prime Minister Carney is a total fraud. I mean, he campaigned on the fact that he was standing up to President Trump, to China, to doing all these things for Canada that were going to be for our benefit by standing up to these massive threats. And that's just not the case. Not the case at all. I mean, even while he was campaigning, these dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs for steel and aluminum and everything else, he quietly removed. But here he is again, threatening to impose them on America if they continue their threat to us. And then also, President Trump signed a new trade deal with China. That's right. Kind of crazy that that's going on. Also, Alberta and Ottawa are literally talking about the fact that separatism has never been higher than what it is right now. So, hey, if that's your cup of tea, then sounds like you'll be having, well, a full cup. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do really want to encourage everyone to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. That's all I care about in this video. Come on, folks. Let's pump those numbers. We got a lot to take a look at in this video, and I do hope you stick around for the full thing. We're going to start off with this.
Prime Minister Mark Carney can now say he kept his first major political promise, turning legislation to fast-track major projects into law by Canada Day. Bill C-5 passed the Senate yesterday and received royal assent.
Is it your pleasure, honourable senators, to adopt the motion?
Yes.
Adopté.
The bill is aimed at boosting Canada's economy and reducing dependence on the United States. Part of it opens up interprovincial trade barriers, but it also makes it easier for the government to greenlight projects that it deems to be in the national interest, projects like pipelines, mines, and highways.
So I actually threw this into ChatGPT and just simply asked, what does this mean? Like, summarize this bill for me. And at the bottom of the entire summary, it says TLDR. Part 1, this dismantles federal trade and labor restrictions across provinces. And Part 2 allows faster federal approval of key projects by streamlining permits, yet it raises serious Indigenous rights, environmental, and democratic governance concerns. So it's almost like the government's basically trying to use emergency powers to do whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want. Yeah. Where have we seen that before?
C-5 really rushed through the Commons in the Senate in a sense, Janet, just a matter of weeks to meet that deadline of Canada Day the Prime Minister set. It's law now, so what happens now?
Well, of course, just passing this into law doesn't build any projects. It doesn't fund any projects. It doesn't even in and of itself approve any projects. Notwithstanding the dire warnings about what some felt were draconian measures in this bill, we are not waking up this morning to a country that exists now as a rules-free zone for major infrastructure. We will see, though, whether easing up on the regulatory burden helps strike the better balance that fans of this bill said was necessary. The Prime Minister heard loud and clear from Indigenous leaders, for one, that his process process had fallen far short of what they would have wanted. He is committed to, frankly, spending a chunk of his summer now in key conversations with them, trying to set that right. Anytime you work fast, you run the risk of breaking things. Paula Simons was one of many senators quite uncomfortable with how the Senate got squeezed in the end here because of the Prime Minister's July 1st deadline.
Yeah, July 1st deadline is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, it's right around the corner. It's next week. I mean, this is wild that he's trying to push this through this fast. Seems like he's trying to go for legacy at this point, and he will not stop at anything. Again, whom does that remind you of? Trudeau, maybe?
There is a convention that says that if a prime minister runs on a topic, wins a mandate, had it in the platform, that we, the appointed House, show proper deference to the elected House of Commons. And so we did our job of laying out all our concerns very clearly. And that way, if something does go sideways, we will have the somewhat dubious pleasure of being able to say, we told you so.
So even independent senators are saying, well, we warned people against it, yet here we are. It got basically pushed through in the blink of an eye. Parliament is out. Parliament got prorogued. They worked less than 4 full weeks. Get that. Our politicians worked less than 4 full weeks this entire year to date. Isn't that crazy? And so here we are with this emergency powers bill that allows, now it's been approved, allows Mark Carney to do whatever, whenever, however, to whomever, with no repercussions. But hey, I'm sure we're probably exaggerating, right? What could possibly go wrong?
Well, Canada's steel industry is speaking out over the government's response to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. And these numbers will show you on this calendar. The industry is one of the hardest hit by Trump's trade war. It started back in March when the U.S. slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian steel. Well, flash forward to June, and that tariff doubled to 50%. The issue is that 91% of Canadian steel exports go to the United States, so this has had just a massive impact on the industry and on their workers. Nearly 1,000 steel jobs have been lost so far. Now, Canada has not yet retaliated. Instead, Prime Minister Carney set a 30-day deadline to get an overall trade and security deal with the United States.
So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something.
Within days, within weeks, is there that kind of runway?
Yeah, it's achievable. Both parties have to agree. Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's the first deadline. And just last week, Mark Carney set another deadline. If a deal isn't reached with the U.S. by July 16th, Canada will retaliate on the steel tariffs on July 21st.
It's so funny to me every time we hear somebody talk about the fact that Mark Carney and Canada is going to retaliate on the tariffs. Like, dude, you literally said that you were going to. It was in place, and then you quietly removed it. So how are we supposed to believe anything you say if you literally were doing it, but then undid it quietly? I mean, am I being gaslit? Am I going mental here? Because I feel like I'm going a little cuckoo listening to this stuff.
In the meantime, the government brought in new procurement measures to make sure government projects use Canadian steel. And they brought in new quota measures to prevent other countries from dumping cheap steel into the Canadian market.
We must reinforce our strength at home and safeguard Canadian workers and businesses from the unjust U.S. tariffs that exist at present.
Unjust U.S. tariffs. I mean, you know what's crazy is that this is what, I mean, Trudeau campaigned on. Trudeau kept saying unjust this, the unjust war, unjust tariffs, unjust trade, unjust retaliatory this. It's these weird scare tactics. I don't necessarily agree with the tariffs, but they're not unjust. I mean, anyone has the ability to increase tariffs however and whenever they want. There's so many loopholes in the system. It doesn't mean it's unjust. It's quite literally justified. The whole thing began because our border was weak and we had massive drug problem here in Canada, specifically in BC, and we were supposed to fix those things. And did we ever really fix those things? I don't know. It seems like there's a new massive drug bust every week, and I don't know if our border is that good considering Iranian officials are fleeing Iran to come and hide in Canada and Now the FBI and the CBSA are working together, but that's a different story for another video. Yep, that's true though. We do have terrorists that are hiding here in Canada.
Your statement expressed disappointment with the government's response, saying it fell short. I do think that they're sensing the urgency of the crisis that your industry is facing.
Yes, I do think they're sensing the urgency. The issue here for us is the details matter. As you point out in your introduction, there were some really things we were banking on, new measures that we were banking on that were really going to help us in the immediate circumstance. That's the tariff rate quota and other trade measures on global overcapacity.
Right, so the tariff rate quota, just to catch people up, there are a bunch of countries we do not have trade deals with as a country, Canada, that has a certain amount of steel that comes in, often non-market economies, at lower prices and lower wage standards than the Canadian producers have. The government set a tariff at 100% of what came into the country in 2024 can come in. Anything above that is hit with the tariff. So that stops a surge of steel being dumped in Canada to get around the U.S. tariff, but it doesn't reduce the amount that was already coming in. So it doesn't give you any more breathing space in the Canadian market, correct?
Right, exactly. That's the context I wanted to remind viewers of, which is that we've lost a market for 6.5 million tons of steel. That's half of our market, of our production. So with the U.S. at 50% tariff, we're desperate to have a new market for that 6.5 million tons. And so our hope was that the measures enacted by the government would give us that breathing room within our own market. Like, in other words, in Canada, where we can control what we can do.
Right. So did you get an explanation? Because there's two groups of countries I know you're worried about. Ones that Canada has a trade agreement with and ones that they do not. But this particular group of no trade deal, why they didn't reduce the amount? Why they didn't push the quota lower?
So, you know, I think that we're on a journey. So we had to take our time to understand the announcement. It was complicated. We also had to search out more detail. And what we think, is that Canada, in the rush to act, which we appreciated, perhaps went to what they knew, which was the approach taken in 2018. And the reality is, David, and we spoke about this last time, is this is not 2018. This is not the first tariff war that we experienced. This is much more dramatic. It says, first of all, it's at a 50% tariff, and it's surrounded by a significant amount of additional uncertainty and chaos. So, you know, the instinct of working fast was great, but sticking with what they did last time is not sufficient by any stretch of the imagination for today's situation.
But what they did last time is they said they were going to do retaliatory tariffs, and they never did. And you know what's even crazy about this? Is that America has no problem saying how much money they've made off of tariffs. We were making $2 billion a day. It's the greatest thing ever. You ask Canadian officials, how much money have we made off tariffs? Well, did you know that actually Canada was founded in the year... What? No, that's not what I asked. Well, you know, since it is June, we are going to raise the pride flag alongside the Canadian flag. What? That's not the question at all. I asked, how much money did Canada make from tariffs, from retaliatory tariffs? Well, first I'd like to say that... I'm standing on so-and-so land, and I just want to do a land acknowledgement. Like, that's not the question. Stop avoiding. It's bizarre that our Canadian officials keep doing this weird peacocking thing, where they're trying to appear bigger and stronger than they really are, yet they can't answer simple questions as to how much money we've made from tariffs, which kind of begs the question, are we really making any money off this?
Is it because of all the other underlying economic uncertainty, they just didn't want to cut off sources of cheap steel to people who are like, is that a motivating factor here, do you think?
I think there is a concern out there about essentially supply shocks. And so, you know, I understand that concern, as does my entire board, the leadership of the steel industry. But what we wanted was a slightly more helpful step, and then to work with the government in lockstep to ensure those supply disruption, you know, points, areas that were difficult could be addressed in real time. So we offered that to the government. You know, let's be mindful that the supply shocks aren't, you know, there are places that we have to keep an eye on, and we'll work together to make sure that we have it. And that's another difference between 2018 and now, David. And I think the supply shocks in 2018 did exist. But again, we didn't have a 50% tariff, so we still had product moving to the United States. Now we don't. It's very, very reduced anyway.
Yeah, and this is the challenge. You look at Algoma and Sault Ste. Marie. I mean, it's the overwhelming majority of their steel goes there. And I talked to the Mayor Shoemaker, I believe, of the Sault, and he's worried about the Sault becoming a post-industrial town if this goes under. So I appreciate that they're trying to, you want the space in the domestic market, but pivoting to that will take time, right? And I know the last time we spoke was about 700 to 1,000 jobs that have been lost because of this. But at a 50% tariff, it's not going to be 2,000 jobs. It's going to be exponential job loss. So where are things now as we look towards the July 16th?
So we're at 1,000 job losses now. I think we were 700 the last time we spoke. I'm talking to my board. They're preparing for thousands more job loss in very imminent future, days ahead.
Like before July 16th? Before that?
Yeah, I think it'll, I hope not, but yes, it's an unpredictable environment, but they're all working as fast as possible to try to get, supports in place to prevent that. Everybody wants to prevent the job losses, so that's why I can't give you a precision.
I got you. No, I got you.
But the pressures are immense. There's, order book challenges. There's significant, loss of customer base, even customers that we're willing to take a chance. Now, since G7, they really are not willing to kind of ride this out. The can might get kicked down farther and farther. So, this is a really serious crisis. The circumstances couldn't be more dire.
You know what the crisis really is? It's the fact that we have such piss poor leadership. I mean, we did 10 years of it, and now we've got it again. Instead of trying to peacock against America, why is it so hard for a Canadian official? And, I mean, the Conservatives aren't really better in this particular circumstance I'm going to pinpoint, but why aren't Canadian officials going, hey, America, what do you want? What can we do for you? Let's all work together so we can all get back to being good neighbors and making money and securing our defense because we've got threats from around the world. Like, why is that so hard? Are we going to lose Canadian voter base for literally looking out for Canadians? Like, is our voters that retarded? You know what? We did elect another liberal, so maybe we are just that retarded. But moving away from that stuff, we now got to take a look at China. The fact that Trump made a new deal with China. What does this mean? Let's take a look.
The United States and China have agreed to the framework for a new trade deal. Confirmed by both countries today, the agreement includes a major concession from Beijing. China will expedite export licenses for rare earth minerals vital to U.S. industries. In return, Washington will lift several restrictions on Chinese technology firms and cancel certain trade measures. Officials say the deal was finalized after talks in Geneva and London. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick called it signed and sealed, marking a breakthrough in easing tensions between the world's top two economies.
中国商务部的发言人已就此发表了有关的评论。我想强调的是，我们希望美方同中方一道，落实两国元首通话达成的重要共识，发挥中美经贸磋商机制的作用，通过沟通对话。 增进共识，减少误解，加强合作，推动中美关系稳定、健康、可持续发展。
See, that's pretty interesting because that was supposed to be the big bad enemy to America, yet here they are making deals. I mean, Trump is trying to solve the war between Russia and Ukraine. He solved the war between Iran and Israel while also denuclearizing a massive terrorist regime, and he's being nominated by Pakistan. I don't know if it's facetious or not, but he's being nominated by Pakistan for a Nobel Prize, and now he's got to deal with China. I mean, that's a real good negotiator. Somebody who's literally putting their blood, sweat, and tears into what's best for that country. America first, quite literally. We're seeing that happen. Totally awesome and badass and respectable. What's Canada doing? Well, we're trying to sell ourselves to Europe instead of America because of a little fight. So we're going to run away from that relationship and try to start a new one abroad. It's just weird what's going on. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about America and China new trade deal. Do you think that's good or bad for the world? Let me know. Next up, we're taking a look at Danielle Smith, separatism, and how Ottawa realizes that, oh yeah, this is really happening. And it's not going to be good for Canada.
Premier Danielle Smith argues a recent by-election is proof Alberta's separatist movement has never had more support, pointing to one rural riding where the Alberta Republican Party earned about 17% of the vote.
I take that seriously, and I hope that the federal government takes that seriously.
Smith believes separatist sentiments were created by Ottawa. She argues it's up to the federal government to fix it, pitching proposals like coast-to-coast oil and gas shipping access.
If they make the changes that we're requesting, then I suspect they can take the air out of that movement.
Federal Minister Chrystia Freeland also spoke at the Calgary News Conference. She points to incoming legislation that gives Ottawa the power to fast-track projects intended to boost the national economy. She says Ottawa wants to build with Alberta.
That's going to be great for Alberta. It's going to be great for all of Canada. And I think that's actually what Albertans want. I think it's what Canadians want.
Former Deputy Premier Thomas Lukaszuk says he believes the Alberta Republican Party failed to snag a seat in the legislature for a reason.
They want this talking about separatism, sovereignty, becoming a 51st state, all of that. They just don't want to hear about this anymore.
But leader Cameron Davies is undeterred, arguing the fledgling party made progress.
If we'd walked away with 3 or 4%, like most independence candidates have done over the last 20, 30 years, then I'd have a different story.
Meanwhile, Lukaszuk expects a decision from Elections Alberta this week regarding his plight to stop talks of Alberta separation. He wants a referendum petition approved that asks if people agree Alberta must remain in Canada and any form of separation be rejected.
This petition will hopefully put an end to this, and there will be a very clear message from Canadians living in Alberta.
Smith believes desire to leave Canada has never been greater. When asked what her government could do to ease concerns, she pointed back to the federal government.
This is really in Ottawa's hands.
That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the video. I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you think that Alberta's going to separate? Are you in Alberta? Do you support it? What's it going to be called? Is it going to remain Alberta? Is it going to be part of America? I'd love to know your guys' theories down below. If you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.